She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She didn't even look guilty. She just stared at the TV like it was giving her permission and said the sentence like she was reading a weather report. If I'm being honest, I always hoped I'd end up with someone else. For a second, I didn't react. Not because I didn't understand, because my brain refused to accept that 5 years of my life could be reduced to a single casual confession delivered during a commercial break. I turned my head slowly and looked at her. Her face was calm, thoughtful even, like she expected me to appreciate the honesty. I felt my chest tighten, then loosen, like a knot finally giving up. I smiled once, faint and polite. "Interesting," I said. Then I said nothing else. I stayed silent. I didn't ask questions. I didn't react the way movies promised, because the truth was already loud enough. If you say you always hoped for someone else, it means I was never the destination. I was the pause before whatever she thought she deserved. The next morning, while she was out grabbing coffee with a friend, I packed her things with surgical calm, each shoe placed with precision, each box a measure of control returning to my hands. The lease was in my name. She came home to boxes and a note. Now you can. That's the whole story in one paragraph. The clean version. The version you can tell at a bar without your voice shaking. But the part that stays with you is how normal everything felt right before it broke. It was a Thursday night. Nothing special. We'd eaten pasta, the same easy meal I made when I didn't want to think. We sat on the couch with a mindless show playing. She had her feet tucked under her, wearing my hoodie, her hair still damp from a shower. I remember the smell of the shampoo. I remember the warmth of her leg against mine. I remember thinking, this is what a life looks like when it's finally settled. Then she paused the show. "Hey, can we talk?" That tone. Not sweet, not scared, not emotional. Professional. I muted the TV and waited. She took a breath and stared at the dark screen like it could reflect the right expression back at her. "If I'm being honest, I always hoped I'd end up with someone else." She said it gently. That's what made it brutal. The softness wasn't love. It was distance. My throat went dry. "What do you mean?" I asked. She shrugged like it was simple. "I mean you're good, you're kind, you're stable, you've been solid. But I always pictured my life with someone different. Someone more electric." She kept talking, and the more she talked, the more I realized she'd rehearsed it. Not word for word, but emotionally. She'd already walked herself to the ending where she got to keep her self-image intact. Growing up, she said, "I thought I'd end up with someone who takes risks, someone who makes things feel bigger. You know, the kind of guy who just decides on a Tuesday to book a flight somewhere and go?" She finally looked at me as if expecting me to fill in the blanks. And then she said a name. Miles. Not some ex from college. Not a celebrity crush. A real person with a real face. A guy from her studio building who had a loud laugh and a habit of talking about himself like he was a brand. Miles was the kind of man who called every bad decision a story. He was the kind of man who treated responsibility like a disease. And she said his name like it was a dream she'd been patient enough to deserve. I didn't move. My hands stayed still on my knees. My voice stayed flat. "So why are you telling me this now?" I asked. She exhaled, almost relieved. "Because I don't want to waste our time. I don't want to keep doing this if I'm always wondering. It's not fair to either of us." Her words were dressed up as maturity, but what she meant was, I want the option to leave without being the villain. I stared at her and tried to reconcile the woman on my couch with the woman I met 5 years earlier. I met her at a friend's housewarming in our city. She was the bright one, the creative one, the person who spoke like life was supposed to be a canvas. She worked freelance in branding and design, always talking about her future studio, her big break, her portfolio, her next move. I was the steady one. I wrote code. I built systems. I liked quiet mornings and predictable routines. Nothing flashy, but it paid well and it made me dependable. From the start, I was all in. 6 months in, she moved into my apartment because her place was falling apart and she hated her roommates. It made sense. I had the bigger space. I'd been there for years. The lease was already in my name. I loved having her there. I loved waking up next to her. I loved the way she filled the room with music and ideas. Over time, I carried more than my share because I thought that's what love required. But looking back, there were cracks I chose to paint over. Little comments. How some guy in her co-working space was fearless. How she wished she'd traveled more before settling down. How she envied women whose partners were spontaneous. She'd say it lightly, like it was small talk. I told myself it was harmless. Everyone daydreams. Everyone wonders what ifs. I didn't realize she was auditioning me against a fantasy. The worst part was that I wasn't shocked by her confession. Not completely. It fit too well with the way she'd been pulling away the last few months. The way she'd started dressing like every errand was a runway. The way she'd been on her phone at dinner, smiling at messages she wouldn't show me. The way she'd asked me questions that weren't really questions. Do you ever wish you were more adventurous? Do you ever feel like we got comfortable too fast? Do you ever think about changing everything? I'd answered honestly. Calmly. Like a man who thought relationships were built on steadiness, not theatrics. Now I understood she wasn't curious. She was collecting evidence. That night on the couch, after she said it, she waited. I could feel her waiting. Waiting for me to do what men do in movies. Waiting for anger, for bargaining, for a grand speech. I didn't give her any of it. I gave her a smile. Not cruel, not sarcastic, just small. Detached. Interesting, I said again. Then I unmuted the TV and let the show keep playing, like her words hadn't hit me right in the spine. She stared at me for a moment, confused. Off balance, like I'd broken the script. Then she tried to bridge it. I'm not saying you did anything wrong, she said quickly. You're a great partner. You've been amazing to me. She said it like a compliment someone gives a restaurant they'll never come back to. I nodded once. Okay, I said. That was the last conversation we had as a couple. We went to bed that night and the bed felt like a hotel. Familiar, but not mine. She tried to curl into me like she always did, like physical closeness could erase the sentence she'd said out loud. I turned away and stared at the ceiling until the dark turned gray. My mind replayed everything. The sacrifices, the compromises, the silent ways I chose us over myself. And the question that kept returning wasn't why wasn't I enough? It was why did I ever accept being treated like a placeholder? By morning, the emotion had burned down into something clear. Self-preservation. I didn't want to fight for someone who admitted she was waiting for someone else. I didn't want to audition for a role I already had. So when she left the apartment around 10, saying she was meeting a friend to brainstorm a project, I got up and started moving. Not dramatic, methodical. I pulled boxes from the storage closet and laid them open like a work site. I started with her closet, her dresses, her shoes, her jewelry. I folded and packed with the same calm I use when I'm preparing a deployment at work. Everything had a place. Everything had an end state. In the bathroom, I gathered her skincare and makeup. The expensive bottles lined up like a museum exhibit of curated identity. In the living room, I packed her art supplies, notebooks, the little things she claimed were essential to her creativity, but usually sat untouched. I didn't take anything that wasn't mine. I didn't break anything. I didn't leave a mess. By noon, the apartment looked like a move-out inspection was about to happen. Stacks of boxes by the door, her life arranged neatly for pickup. I made one more pass through the bedroom, checking drawers, shelves, corners. Then I sat at the kitchen table with a pen and a sticky note. I didn't write a letter. I didn't explain my pain. I wrote 4 words. Now you can. That was it. A solution to the problem she presented. She said she always hoped for someone else. Now she could go find him without me standing in the doorway of her fantasy. I taped the note to the top box and poured myself coffee. Not her coffee. Mine. I took one sip and felt my hands steady. When she came home, it was just after 1. She walked in carrying a paper bag like nothing had happened, like she expected me to be waiting in the same place, ready to talk, ready to negotiate. She stopped the second she saw the boxes. Her face changed in layers. Confusion first, then offense, then fear. "What is this?" she snapped. I stayed seated. "Your things?" I said. Her eyes narrowed. "Are you serious right now?" "The lease is in my name," I said calmly. "I'll handle the paperwork. You can stay with a friend while you figure out your next step." The word friend hit her like a trap door, because she hadn't said she wanted to leave. She'd said she wanted someone else. She wanted an upgrade without losing the safety net. "You're kicking me out?" she said, voice rising. "It's not kicking you out," I said. "It's making your statement true." She scoffed, trying to regain control. "You're overreacting." I was just being honest. "Honest doesn't mean harmless," I said. Her jaw tightened. She glanced around the apartment like she was seeing it for the first time as something she might lose. "This is insane," she said. "Over one conversation?" "It wasn't one conversation," I said. "It was 5 years explained in one sentence." That landed. I saw it land. I saw the moment she realized I wasn't going to argue the way she expected. Her voice dropped into something smoother. "Okay, wait," she said. "I didn't mean it like that. I mean, I love you. I do. I'm just confused. Everyone wonders sometimes." I took another sip of coffee. "Everyone wonders," I agreed. "But most people don't tell their partner they were hoping for someone else. That's not wondering. That's waiting." She stared at me like she hated that the words made sense. Then the comparison came out, sharp and automatic. Miles would never do this. He would fight. He would care enough to fight. There it was. The truth under the truth. She didn't want stability. She wanted drama that looked like passion. I nodded once, like I'd just received a final piece of data. "Then he can have you," I said. Her face twisted, anger flashing. "So you're just done. Like that." I looked at her, and the calm was almost surreal. "You ended it last night," I said. "I just handled the logistics this morning." She stared at the boxes like she expected them to disappear if she looked long enough. Then she started grabbing them, huffing, muttering, blaming me with every breath. "You're cold," she said. "You always were. This is why I felt this way." It was a familiar move. Rewrite the story so she didn't have to sit with her own choices. I didn't correct her. I just stood up and opened the door. "I'll hold it," I said. She hated that. She wanted tears. She wanted pleading. She wanted me to validate her importance by collapsing. Instead, I held the door like a stranger. She hauled boxes to her car in a storm of energy that looked like indignation but smelled like panic. When she was halfway done, she stopped and looked at me. "You'll regret this," she said. I didn't answer. When she finally drove away, the apartment fell quiet. No shouting, no slammed doors, no begging, just space. I stared at the mug she'd left behind. Abandoned mid-sip, warmth fading into the silence. That was us in one image. Something I kept making out of habit long after the warmth was gone. The first week after she left was strange. Not loud pain. Just a thin, constant disbelief. I changed the locks that same day. Practical, not petty. I updated passwords. I removed her access to shared accounts. I informed the landlord she was moving out. Paperwork, clean lines. At night, I'd sit on the couch and feel the ghost of her presence. The weight of a body that used to be there. The shape of a routine that used to exist. The worst part wasn't loneliness. It was the thought that maybe she'd never loved me the way I loved her. That maybe I was always an investment until something more exciting came along. But I didn't chase her. I didn't text. I didn't ask for closure. Because closure came in the form of her own sentence. I always hoped to end up with someone else. You don't heal by negotiating with that. You heal by stepping away from it. I started doing things I'd stopped doing. I went back to the gym, not to prove anything, just to feel my body belong to me again. I called old friends I'd been too busy to see, the ones she called boring because they didn't dress like they were on camera. One night over beers, my friend Jordan said something that hurt because it was true. Man, she always acted like you were lucky to have her. I didn't defend her. I didn't even feel the need to. I just nodded. Work got easier too. Not because it was less demanding, but because I wasn't carrying emotional weight every day on top of it. I accepted the promotion I'd turned down. It meant longer hours. It also meant more money and more authority and a clean sense of direction. I wasn't rebuilding to show her what she lost. I was rebuilding because I'd finally admitted I deserved a life that wasn't conditional. A few months passed and the world kept moving. I focused on my work, my health, my friends, the quiet routines I'd abandoned while trying to be enough for someone who was already looking past me. Somewhere along the way, I heard she'd chased the kind of excitement she talked about. It didn't turn into the life she imagined. Then one night she reached out, a message, then another. Apologies wrapped in regret, like she expected me to reopen a door just because she finally felt the cold outside it. I didn't answer. I didn't argue. I didn't punish her. I just stayed gone, stayed. A year later, I saw her again at a mutual friend's wedding. She was alone, smaller somehow, and she walked over like she'd been waiting for the moment. She spoke fast, like if she paused, she'd lose momentum. I was wrong. I messed up. He was a nightmare. I thought I wanted excitement, and I got chaos. I miss what we had. I miss you. I've changed. I'm trying, please. I listened without interruption. When she finished, she searched my face for something. Anger, softness, any sign that she still mattered. I felt nothing. Not hate, not love, just distance. You told me you always hoped for someone else, I said calmly. Now you have that freedom. She tried to speak again, but I shook my head. I protect my peace now. I walked away and didn't look back. The music was loud. The lights were warm. The night moved on. She left early, I heard later. After that, there were no more emails, no more new numbers, no more surprise appearances. She finally understood what my note meant. Now you can. Not as a punishment, as permission, for both of us. Thanks for listening. If this story resonated with you, subscribe and share what you would have done.